Hello everybody, good afternoon and welcome to this Housing OSC on Monday the 17th of March. I'll rattle through the housekeeping. Same as always about mobile phones, don't think anything more needs said. We're not expecting a fire alarm. Just a quick reminder that the meeting is being recorded and live streamed. Any questions, committee members get first dibs. And then non-committee members. I can't see any non-committee members at the moment, but if any, rock up. Okay, so we'll move on to the agenda. Public speaking, Lucy. No public speakers.
That's right, Chairman. We've not been notified of any public speakers.
That's a real shame. Item 2, apologies for absence.
Thank you, Chairman. We've had apologies from Councillor Wood, Paul Wood. We've had apologies from Councillor Matt Bailey, who is being substituted by Councillor Gloria Johnson, and Councillor Bridget Lay has sent her apologies, and she's been substituted by Councillor Tim Harrison.
Thank you very much for that. So on to item 3, disclosure of interest. Again, I'm not going to laboriously go through it. Members know the drill. Would anybody like to declare any kind of interest? You can, of course, do so at any stage of the meeting. Okay, thank you. Item 4, minutes of the meeting held on the 20th of January. Has anybody got any comments about accuracy? No? Fantastic news. Can I have a proposer for those minutes then, please? Somebody that was here. Thank you. Zoe, can I have a seconder? Somebody that was here. Thank you, Anna. Okay, that's we need a vote. All those in favour, please, of those minutes. All those against. Any abstentions? Thank you very much. Okay, so we move swiftly on. This can't carry on, this swiftness. Item 5, any announcements from Leader of the Council or Cabinet members? Councillor Moran?
No. Can I just ask people to check their diaries for this evening? That's all. Okay.
Thank you very much. Anything from senior officers, Alison, Sarah, etc.? No? Okay, wonderful. So we move on to item 6. This is the housing compliance figures. Councillor Moran.
Thank you, Chair. All looking good, really. We've got 100% on the usual suspects, which is Legionella, asbestos, FRA, lifts and smoke. Quite a nice little increase on damp and mould. Yeah, 60.53, that's quite good from last time. Electric, 94.62. Tiny little increase. We're still having trouble, as we are with gas, with people not letting us into properties. I will just say on the graph, the second graph that we have, when you look at January 25, there's a very large increase. That was a whoopsie on the input of information. Yeah, it should stop at about a third of the way. So it is a very slight increase, but it's a very large scale graph, is that, isn't it? There's very little between the two pointers. So yeah, all good. We're going to have another go at perhaps putting something in Skyline about people, please, we are begging you, please have your gas and electric certification, please let us in. We actually had 2 cases this last month where people were due to receive new central heating boilers, and they wouldn't let us in to put a new heating boiler in. It just beggars belief, really, doesn't it? But there we are. Yeah, so the only thing I would mention, Chair, I don't know how you feel about this or how the committee feels about it. We're 18 months since the regulator let us go, as it were, and we achieved everything for them. I think the figures now are becoming quite standardised with the percentages that were below and the reasons for that. we do have myself and Karen Bradford, Chief Executive, and the leader of the council, and Alison, do have monthly compliance meetings, which we're not looking at changing. We're still going to do that. But I just thought today's a perfect example. We've got 17 things on the agenda. I just wondered if you'd be happy if the compliance figures went to 6 monthly rather than every meeting, Chair?
I'll throw that open to members, and then I'll give my personal opinion. So I'll open that up to members. Councillor Kelly.
Sorry. I'm just happy to say, as long as they don't fall by 3% on anything, that would make me happy. As long as somebody's monitoring them and they don't drop more than 3%, then we don't need to see it.
Okay, thank you very much.
I'm putting that as an offer.
No, is that a formal proposal, as it were, Councillor Kelly?
If you would like it to be.
Well, no, it's not if I would like it to be, it's if you would like it to be. Yeah. Let's get some more opinion. Yeah. Okay, anybody else? Councillor Lane.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On the electrical and gas compliance, more than happy with what Councillor Moran is suggesting. My only question is, would it be beneficial to us to keep seeing the damp and mould as progress is being made with that, and it's a new policy?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we had agreed that starting from June we'll start regularly bringing KPI data to the committee, which covers the whole of the service area. So what I would propose is that we include the damp and mould figures within that KPI information, because it does relate to Mark's service area. Thank you.
Any other members of the committee want to say anything about this? No, well then, from a personal point of view, sorry, Councillor Milnes, I apologise.
Sorry, it's rather oblique, I'm afraid, but just going back to why we're not let in to, say, replace a boiler, and then that impacts, obviously, all our compliance.
Because, quite simply, the tenants are obstructive so-and-sos who, for whatever reason, don't want council work people to go into their homes. It's as simple as that.
Yeah. It's just that recently I've had some experience of vulnerable tenants and the heat pump issues, and sometimes it might not be quite identified that the impact of disruption on people. If there's a real reason, I get it. If they're just being what you said they are, that's something else. But there can be great fears of disruption. People have mental health issues as well as physical issues, or a son or a grown-up child with those issues, and it's very disruptive to them. I'm just putting it out there as a possibility, and I'm assuming we do bottom as to exactly what the problem is.
Yeah, and I take your point completely, and I'm not an expert, obviously, of course I'm not. I'll let the experts in a minute, in a second, Sarah, but from what I read and pick up with officers, you know, people are given chance after chance, and there are always exceptions, there are always genuine reasons. But most of it, unfortunately, is that the people concerned are intransigent and hostile. In most, not all cases. I'll let Sarah come in, and then Councillor Harrison.
Thank you, Chair. It was just really to reassure you, we are aware that some tenants, you know, on occasion there's vulnerabilities, there's complex mental health issues and perhaps other issues. We do have our tenancy support team in place to take on any cases like that. And obviously working alongside them, we've got our housing officers, so they're well equipped. They've had all the sort of safeguarding type training to spot issues like that. So it's not just a case of we go straight to enforcement measures. We would try and support that family before that, but equally we've got to balance that with the fact that we do have to, you know, for their own safety, complete those works. But yeah, sometimes it can be very complex, but we do work with tenants.
I'm going to give you the opportunity, if you want to, Councillor Milnes, to come back, because you're looking
yes,
as if you want to.
I do appreciate that in a lot of cases that is true. there is the odd case slips through the net, or where the vulnerabilities might have been picked up but don't seem to come to the fore, and then the contractors arrive, and then it all blows up, and people like me get a phone call and have to go in and see it. And it's that pre-knowing that probably is the most important element of it, and doing something about it pre-things happening. Do you understand what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, I do, and your point is absolutely taken, and I'm sure it absolutely is by officers who this is how they operate. As I said, these people are given these people, that sounds awful. People in that situation are given multiple chances. And I think your point is absolutely taken. It really is. It is by me. I'm sure it is by the officers. Councillor Harrison and then Phil.
Just an observation, Chair, more than anything. I've got quite a few issues where our officers have made appointments and the contractors are turning up either at the wrong house or the wrong date that's been agreed. So just ask that our officers keep a close eye on the contractors, that they are turning up on the dates and the proper addresses. I mean, just this morning I've had one saying that they couldn't get access because of rubbish in the garden. He showed me a picture of his garden, there's nothing in there. So they've either gone to the wrong house or they've made an excuse up, you know. Thank you.
That's a very fair point. Phil, sorry. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to follow on from Sarah. Obviously made the perfect point about the safeguarding and the controls that are in place. In addition to that, when we're talking about gas appointments, the residents actually have the option to pick a date and time that works for them as well. So if there is something in particular, the contractors will work around them, so they can select their own date. And what we do actually still find, unfortunately, is people select a date and time that works for them and then still fail to keep that appointment. But we do make every effort, and we do try everything we can. Thank you.
Yeah, so hopefully, yeah, there's teething problems as there is in every single system, but hopefully the committee has had reassurance then. So, Councillor Kelly.
Just to add that as a ward councillor, if I could ever be of assistance by, you know, being made aware of people within my ward that are perhaps being uncooperative in entry to the home, I'm willing to be part of the solution if you want me to. Thank you.
Does anybody else want any of them? Councillor Moran.
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up on what Emma said. Back in the olden days, when I was part of the housing management group, I think it was called, that Robert Reid ran, similarly, it was the fact that we couldn't get into these people's properties and this, that and the other. And I made a similar offer to him, which was followed up by other councillors in the room, to say, look, if there's a problem, we'll come along at the same time. You know, we're quite happy to, you know, go beforehand and have a chat with them or whatever. And I think there was some sort of issue of why we couldn't do that as councillors. It's either health and safety or public protection, or it's some stick they used to beat you with, why you can't just go along and have a sensible conversation with your resident. No, sorry, Chair, I'm being a bit...
Councillor Mills?
Yeah, that's an odd one, isn't it? Because I've been to residents' houses where work's undergoing only this last week. It's like a bomb had hit it. I mean, it was really dangerous, and the resident was still living there and complained, rightly or wrongly, that he really hadn't been warned about the level of disruption for the whole week that the work was taking place. It was a heat pump installation, but so he called me round. So I go on my own, so nobody was saying to me I can't go. I went round and looked at the chaos, and you know, he wasn't making a formal complaint, but he said come and have a look at what this involves. So I think councillors, in my experience, if you go around and talk to some of these residents, if we are brought in for whatever reason, they tend to want to speak to us more than maybe officialdom. And you can, I mean, I have found it, you can sometimes talk them round and they will then accept the situation somehow. I haven't had abuse yet, let me put it that way.
Thank you. Councillor Johnson, did you want to come in?
Thank you. Yeah, I've heard of this a lot of the time, that people turn up and they won't let them in and all this business, but surely it's part of the tenancy agreement that we have access to these properties, and as such I think we ought to be a little bit firmer and not wait so long sometimes to gain access. I mean, in my ward we had all that problem with the bed bugs, and there was one particular man, he must have gone a year and never got made to leave the property to have it done, and all that happened. The bed bugs kept coming back and back because obviously his wasn't done. So I think we ought to be a bit more assertive.
Sarah.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'll take on board your comments, but we do have a set process when it comes to going into properties and inspecting for you know, things that make us compliant. So we have, certainly with the gas safety checks, there's 3 strikes really, 3 appointments, I'm right on, I feel. And then if they still fail to allow us access after that, with all the intervention as well, including tenancy support, if there's any vulnerabilities, then we can actually serve a notice of seeking possession because it is a breach of their tenancy agreement.
Councillor Johnson.
Thank you. I think you're being very, very good to give them 3 chances, because that's all the paperwork you're having to do and all the visits and everything, and I think 2 would be plenty.
Thank you for everybody's comments. An interesting debate, that. Councillor Kelly, purely for clarity, in other words, my shocking male memory, can you please just remind me and the committee what you proposed a few minutes ago, because that's what I want to move on and get done and dusted, please.
I suggested that we accept that the data needs to come to us only every 6 months, so long as any particular figure on that data does not fall in compliance more than 3% overall.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy. I've been pondering. My brain's been whirring. I'm very happy to second that. Is there anybody that wants to speak against that before we quickly move on? Speak against it. Does anybody? Is everybody sure what we're voting on? Yeah? Yeah, sure.
This feels like a doctor's test for dementia. Right, okay. I propose that we accept that the data for compliance in housing comes to us over a period of 6 months rather than on these more regular occasions. But in order to facilitate that, somebody is always monitoring the data and is ensuring that our compliance never drops by more than 3% in any single area. I want a round of applause now.
Thank you, Chair. If it gives any confidence whatsoever, I compile the figures at the end of every month. So every month I am looking at them, see where they've gone down. Just to give you, we talk about percentage points, so 3 is absolutely fine. If I use lifts as an example, we only have 13. If one of those doesn't have its Lola certificate, that would drop to about 68%. So that would be quite a drop. Do you want that as then a full report, or would you prefer me that I email and give you an explanation of what the drop is, where and by how much, rather than bringing you then a full report straight away?
One figure and the reason for that figure would be absolutely fine by me, and I'm sure all the rest of the committee would feel the same.
I think, Phil, it would be useful if you just gave me the headline in an email, just so I can then pass it on. That's brilliant, thank you. We've had a proposer and seconder. All those in favour, please. That's unanimous. Wonderful. Item 7, the Hillsfield project. Councillor Moran.
Right, a couple of things on this. Obviously, ongoing. We currently have 57 completed properties, which have been handed back to tenants. We've got a further 10 in progress. one due to be snagged and one on final sign-off. Those two may have been done because things move on a daily basis on this. The other thing to note that, as you know, we've had some problems with United Living, and they came up with a new plan that was all agreed. That seems to be working absolutely fine. However, there is going to be a delay in the finish date. This has been a very long project with an awful lot of properties, so I'm not really surprised that there's a slight delay. We were due to finish first. Sorry, I'm just reading the report. It said phase 2 will be started by mid-March and will end in March. Oh, that'll be fast. It's probably me not understanding it. Anyway, the completion has now moved till May, the end of May, for the last property, 25. So, a bit of a delay, but goes with the territory, really. Other than that, not a lot to note. You've got your big graph again, so you can see where everybody's at, and work continues. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. So, speaking as one of the ward councillors, I'm just going to repeat very quickly exactly what I said at our last meeting. You know, this has been a big project, so we're talking about a delay of 60 days. Okay, not ideal, but it's hardly a disaster. And I'm speaking personally now. That's how I see it as the ward councillor. Okay, there's a 60-day delay. Well, all right, unfortunate, but it is what it is. And you know, the overall impact, as I've said many times now, will be absolutely fantastic for that estate. Alison.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's just really to confirm the project will finish by the 31st of May. We have got some challenges in decanting some of the remaining tenants. What we've said is if they haven't moved by a certain point, we'll have to complete the works under a separate scheme, because we can't just allow the project to just drift, because we'll end up incurring additional costs with United Living, because obviously they'll need to continue to allocate resource to this scheme. So all properties will be completed, but it may be that we have to hand them to a different under one of our existing contracts to get them the work done on them. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Johnson.
Just as a matter of interest, did you get access quite readily to all the properties, or did you incur a lot of difficulties of getting in to do it? Just as a point of interest from the previous item that we discussed, just as a point of interest. Thank you.
I'm not aware of any particular challenges. The more challenging access are the properties we're dealing with now. So where we have had challenges, we've moved the tenants then to the end of the programme so that we can continue to work with them, because as has been previously pointed out, for some tenants it is quite challenging to leave their existing home and move into a decant property for a 12-week period. So, yeah, where we have experienced difficulties, we've moved them to the end of the programme, so therefore we can avoid any significant delays during the process. Thank you.
Any other members want to come in on this? Well, again, as ever, I just put on formal record my personal thanks to all involved as one of the ward councillors for all the excellent work that's been done on that Earlsfield estate. Thank you. So we move on then to item 8, new build and acquisitions update, and this is Alison.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we agreed this would be a verbal update, primarily because the schemes don't progress significantly between meetings. So, as you're aware, we've got 20 units that are being developed at Swinegate. They're on track to be completed by July of this year. Wellington Way will be developing 11 units, subject to planning permission, 11 units. The planning's now been submitted, so we're just waiting for it to go through that process, and then we'll start the tender process to find a contractor to develop the houses for us. Gorse Rise, so this is a small development of 6 homes. That's going to be formally submitted for planning by the end of this month, following the pre-planning advice that's been taken into consideration. and we'll then start the formal tender process. The remaining properties that the council's purchased with the Local Authority Housing Fund, so that was for Ukrainian and Afghan refugees, they were all completed on the 24th of January. These properties are all located in Bourne and are now in the process of being occupied and offered to tenants. We're currently purchasing a 2-bed apartment, so under the buyback scheme, a 2-bed apartment in Stamford, and we also identified a 6-bedroom property which was offered to the council for purchase, because we do have a small requirement for large properties, so we've taken the opportunity to buy back one of our original properties. But then what we'll do is we'll update a full report to the next committee so that you get everything in a little bit more detail. Thank you.
Thank you, Alison. So this is for noting, an opportunity for members to make any comments should they wish. Councillor Baker and then Councillor Milnes.
Yeah, just last time you said that we were still looking for certain types of housing. Are we still after some certain types, and if so, what types?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We've got a complex needs housing list, so the team are regularly reviewing the needs of the people on that list, and we'll identify whether we can purchase properties on the open market. So that might be bungalows which lend themselves to being adapted. But what we're also doing is wherever we're developing our own schemes, where the schemes are large enough, we will try to put at least one fully adapted bungalow on there, if we can, taking into consideration the needs of the people on that list. But they can vary widely. But how many people are on that list, Sarah? So got about 20 people on that list, so it's something the team are continually monitoring, so whenever a property becomes void, they'll consider whether it would meet the needs of anybody on that list. Thank you.
Councillor Milnes?
Yes, I think I'm still being a bit obscure this afternoon, but on the buyback scheme, where Serco take a property that's been sold, do they have to approach us? Are they buying that property or are they renting it or somebody? How do we know whether that's a buyback option or not?
Any buybacks, it's written into it has to be offered back to the council within, I think it's the first 10 years of us selling the right to buy property. It has to be offered back to the council first. I'll hand over to Sarah for the other part of the question.
Thank you. In terms of Serco, so they have a list of pre-approved postcodes, which I'm looking into because I don't know when that was approved. I think before my time. And they look for properties. I don't believe they purchase them. I believe they take on the management of those properties. They're privately owned, and they take on the management of those properties in certain areas across the district. So yeah, I'm looking into that a bit more as to how that was pre-approved. And obviously, whenever they get a property on their books, they tell us about it, but we don't have the opportunity to sort of feed into that. But I'd like to hope that they talk to the police and other partner agencies when they're doing that and taking on the management. So,
do you want to come back, Councillor Milnes?
I mean, yes, I've dealt with Sarah over this, and thank you very much, Sarah, for your help. It's just that I don't think we knew about it. It wasn't on our radar at all, which I found rather concerning, particularly in view of other agencies and support. Anyway, my initial question was on the buyback side of the house, because we didn't know about it. I don't know if Serco buy those houses or what's happening.
Sarah?
No, sorry, that is something completely separate. So buybacks are things that they're properties that we would consider buying as the council. Serco, as I said, I don't believe they buy their properties. They take on the management from a private landlord, private owner. So it is two separate things. Just to reassure you, we're in a better position now with Serco. Communication has been stronger now, and I think, again, having taken on this project over the last year myself, I think that's where perhaps communication between Serco and the council has broken down, because I've obviously had a change of management here, but I've grasped hold of it, so it's going to get a lot better. But obviously they've already got the properties that they already manage. It's just a matter of us getting that list of where they are and trying to manage that as much as we can. We do have regular meetings with them, so we are aware of their position at the moment, and I think, as I said, I think going forward things will get a lot better with them.
Okay, Councillor Mills. Yeah.
Yes, thank you, sir.
Yeah. Anybody else want to comment before we move on? This is just for noting. Okay, thank you. So moving on then to item 9, homelessness and rough sleeper update. Councillor Moran.
Thank you, Chair. Right, just some updated figures. The Rough Sleeper initiative, as you're aware from the meeting in January, we've got funding for the next year, 646,000. We are down to 3 individuals in temporary accommodation within SKDC, and we've got 18 active support cases. There's an underspend on the Rough Sleeper initiative, but this doesn't go back. That will be ring-fenced for future use. On the homelessness service, just to finish off the Rough Sleeper, the case numbers are on page 35, and you can see it's a race to the finish between us and South Holland. South Holland are just a nose in front, and North Casteven are getting off very lightly indeed, if you ask me. I think they're bringing him here during the night. Yeah, moving on to homelessness. Active homelessness cases have gone up considerably in January from December. I've no idea why that would be, whether it's landlords deciding, oh, it's a new year, I'll get rid of this place, and littering everybody with Section 21, so I don't know what they're doing. But we're just short of 300 active cases, 214 of which are new approaches. We must be doing well, because the number of people in temporary accommodation isn't reflecting the sort of 20% increase we've had, which is good. That's all good. And we have secured, Emma, you were talking about properties we're looking for. We've actually sorted out a new HMO in Grantham with a partner, and that will be used for temporary accommodation, and that's right in the town centre here. I've forgotten the name of the street, doesn't matter the name of the street. Night shelter. What a raging success this was. It was great. And well done, the man at the back. It's done really well. It's operated for 71 nights, provided 402 bed spaces, and as an unexpected bonus, saved us nearly £16,000 compared to the provision of nightly paid accommodation in hotels where they couldn't access anything because it was, too far out of town and stuff. The service ended on the 28th of February, but we are still looking at a year-round provision, not necessarily in that night shelter, but somewhere, and as far as I'm aware, we'll be opening again for business next time we have a cold snap. So yeah, that's been a really good initiative. I know it was a long time coming, with Sarah trying to work it out most of last year, but we got there in the end, and it worked. Right, resettlement pressures. There was talk a couple of weeks ago regarding the Urban Hotel and the fact that we were told, oh, it's been emptied, are Serco going to take it over, are we going to end up with 100 people in there? We spent about a week getting different messages that either it had been paused for the hotel because the new regulations are that any hotels that are used, they have to provide eating facilities.
Sorry to interrupt you, Councillor Moran, but just on, literally on the back of the comment you've just made, the mixed messages and so on, can you just clarify that that was from the Home Office, those mixed messages, or was it from another source? I ask out of just personal interest.
I think there's an East Midlands migrants something, can't remember the end bit. It was coming from various sources really. It was coming from people we knew, who thought they knew. Anyway, the mixed messages were either it had been paused or it had been cancelled for the urban. Anyway, as it turned out, it was just taken off the list. So that all went away. And we were a bit concerned because the normal procedure is for the Home Office to let us know first and discuss it with us first, which I don't think they did. The East Midlands Migrants something consortium, what's the end bit? Partnership, that's the word I was searching for. I believe they stepped in on our behalf regarding the placement in South Kesteven because there'd been quite a big influx into North Kesteven, and it was our end of North Kesteven that they'd gone to, so they basically said the pressure would be too great. So we managed to get ourselves taken off that. So that was a little bit of drama for that week that it was all going on. Yeah, so that's it on the report really. If you could note it and support the continued service improvements, it says on my piece of paper. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Johnson, you wanted to come in.
Just as a point of interest, I've had two just recently that are going to be made homeless, and it's because the landlords are taking the houses back to sell. So I think that's more the trend than anything, but I don't normally get a lot in my area, but I've had two in the last 2 weeks.
You pass them on to the homeless team. The homeless team are aware of them, are they? Yeah. Good, thanks.
Councillor Harrison.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's just going back with the Home Office failure to notify either us or LCC. Have we sent them a strongly worded email or worse to that effect? Because until that was raised by councillors, that was all going ahead, and we would have known nothing about it until people were moved in. So I think we need to be. I'll shut up and let.
Sarah.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, a strongly worded email did go to the Home Office because we should have been notified before anybody else, and it appeared that wasn't the case. As it stands at the moment, we're told that any plans for that hotel are on hold, and it was myself and a resettlement lead at LCC who have contacted them and said under no uncertain terms they need to be contacting us first before anybody else. It's always difficult because we know that there is social media and things are in that domain, so it's gossip for want of a better gossip. Yes, thank you, Councillor. So we try and manage the message as well as we can, and really, as I said, we just need to get the message directly from the Home Office, and they have. We've made our feelings on that very clear.
Anybody else want to come in? Yeah.
Just one more, Lee. Sorry, Chairman, if I can. It's just bear with me a second. So it's going back to the night shelter. I think you've been, or Ricky was supposed to be coming down, so we've been meeting at the Beehive with the Passage, the Beehive, the Ark, and all those are meeting down there. It would be helpful if somebody could go down there from the office, because what they're wanting to do now is get a purpose building for that between themselves. So it would help if somebody could go down there and meet with all those other agencies and see what you can do at work together.
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. I know Ricky has met many times with the ARC, and yeah, we'll certainly take that on board. And And the group, yeah, I know you've mentioned that before. Yes, please, yeah, if you get Susan to contact me.
Ricky, no pressure whatsoever. Do you want to comment on this, Ricky? You don't have to. It's entirely up to you.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think there's a meeting next week, Councillor Harrison, and I've been invited to it, and dutifully accepted.
Just on the back of the night shelter, again, it's in the ward that I represent. So obviously I've got a strong personal interest in it. That I'm very supportive of it. I've always made that very, very clear to officers and to Councillor Moran. But there was some pushback from local residents. I tend to think that some of that pushback was the result of gossip, hearsay, and so on. You know, none of us, unfortunately, can control some of the bile that's put out on social media. That's the world we live in. But forgive me for using this phrase. I'd just like to push a bit harder on what the future plans are for that night shelter. It sounds a little bit ambiguous. In other words, it's now closed. It's been closed since the end of February. Is it a case of it being used on an ad hoc basis, or, you know, sort of suck it and see, again, forgive the expression, or are the plans a little bit more strategic than that or not? Thank you. Yes, Sarah.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, we'd like to have a bit more of a strategic plan for it. Obviously, the main purpose of it to open over the winter was for the cold spells, and obviously we're hoping, I mean, British weather is very unpredictable, but we're hoping the temperatures remain slightly warmer. So the provision, you know, under SWEP is perhaps not needed. But yeah, it does sound a bit ambiguous at the moment, but we want to get a plan in place. Obviously, we've got to look at the finances and how to run it. And we know there was, you know, I think generally wherever this provision is located, there might be, you know, there's always going to be potential pushback in terms of surrounding residents. So we've got to be really sensitive to that and make sure that we've fully risk assessed everything, and that there's, you know, a robust plan around how it's going to function, and obviously what our response is if there are any issues. So I'm sorry that's a bit of a woolly answer. I'd ideally like to see a provision all year round, but obviously we've just got to balance that with the need for it, and, you know, any surrounding issues in the area, as I said. So any future plans obviously we'll bring back to the committee and keep you fully updated on the progress of it.
Thank you. I also, and I think, I'm making a personal comment here. I think it's well worth remembering that all the officers are working under the tremendous strain at the moment of imminent local government reorganisation. You know, councillors are going to be worried about their seats disappearing or whether they're going to be re-elected. Officers, and I know I'm being blunt here, but, you know, officers are going to be worrying about their career, future prospects, etc. So, again, I'm saying this in a personal capacity, really do appreciate all the work that's going on whilst this big local government reorganisation looms over us. I'll get off my soapbox. Would any other members of the committee like to comment on this item? Final comments on homelessness rough sleeper update. Okay, moving on then. Thank you very much. So, item 10, draft mobility vehicle policy. Councillor Moran.
Thank you, Chair. I think we're all aware that mobility scooters in sheltered schemes is becoming more and more of an issue. So we've put together this policy. The Regulatory Reform Fire Safety Order of 2005 requires that fire risks in communal areas are assessed and actions taken to reduce these risks. Mobility scooters and other battery-operated vehicles are, without question, a fire risk. So the Council has reviewed the mobility scooter storage facilities at all our sheltered housing schemes, and the issues that have been identified are detailed in paragraph 2.2 of the report, which is page 41 onwards. which details some of the problems we have. Not least, there's so many of them. So, to respond to the risk posed by these vehicles, we've reduced this draft mobility vehicle policy, and that's attached in all its glorious full colour at Appendix 1. Paragraph 2.3 of the report, which is page 36, I think, is it? 42, sorry. That summarises the points which are covered by the policy. The Council's Mobility Group has reviewed National Fire Chief Council guidelines and has concluded that a maximum of 3 scooters should be allowed in a sheltered housing scheme at any one time. The key considerations for the committee are detailed in paragraphs 3.1, 3.2 and 3.3. We've done a consultation before on mobility scooter policies. That was back in 2021, but we felt that we couldn't really use that because it's getting on for 4 years old, and nothing, you know, the only thing that stays the same is everything changes. So the report is attached at Appendix 2, but we will repeat this consultation to ensure that the views of current tenants are taken into consideration. That's it, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Right, I'll just open. We do ultimately need to have a vote on whether we send this to as a recommendation to Cabinet or not, but obviously before we do that, I'll just open it up to the floor. Any comments? Sorry, Councillor. Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I really welcome this report. I think it's a great start with getting there on making sure that we are balancing people's need to access the world with their need to be safe with where they're living. I do just have a couple of questions, if I could. It's regarding the requirements that we're looking to put on owners of mobility scooters. I've seen in the draft proposal we are looking at requiring prospective owners to have training and insurance, and also to avoid charging the devices overnight, and to have pat testing. I just wanted to check, is the insurance and the training something that's normally legally required when you buy a mobility scooter? And do we tend to suggest avoiding nighttime usage and pat testing? Sorry, not avoiding pat testing, but having pat testing on all other appliances in homes that are part of our stock, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's my understanding that there is no legal requirement for people to have insurance on the scooters, but we need to take into consideration the potential risk that surrounds scooters themselves. So if you knocked somebody over, who do they then go to, or damage somebody's property as a consequence of having a scooter? Where does that individual go and process that insurance claim? And ultimately, we need to be protecting the council, so therefore it should come down to the individual that's actually got the scooter, that if they were to damage something, that they've got insurance in place that somebody could claim against. I don't believe, when it comes to pat testing, that Phil Swinton will come in on the pat testing bit for you. Sorry, what was the other question you had?
It was about the training.
The charging overnight. Mobility scooters are a serious fire risk, and that's why we don't want them being charged overnight, because obviously if there were a fire, then we've got to consider that people are going to be in bed, them being able to get out of the building, and that's why we don't want them being charged overnight, because of the risks that surround them. And again, when it comes to training, I don't believe it's a legal requirement to have training, but we want to know that people clearly understand how the best way to use a mobility scooter, because then that reduces the risk that surrounds them and the risk they pose to when both charging them and using them to other people. Thank you.
Councillor Harrison, I'm going to let Phil in first, if that's okay with you, and then, yeah, thank you, Phil.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. Just to follow on from Alison, absolutely right on the insurance and the training side of it, but we are trying to build in those safeguards and redundancies. In terms of training, it could be something as simple as information and training that the working group create and then can be provided to tenants through tenant engagement. It doesn't necessarily mean it has to be some sort of very strict formal training. Again, the overnight charging is absolutely right. We don't want them charging overnight because there is a build-up and the risk increases, and Alison rightly says people will be asleep. In terms of the PA testing, no, not every appliance inside a domestic property or those properties would have to be tested. However, most of them won't have those lithium-style batteries, which are the greatest risk I think we're facing in terms of fire and personal items that people bring into the schemes. What we've also found as well is that a lot of the charging units, or some of the charging units we've already inspected, aren't actually legal within this country. They've been bought online from another country. So that's the reason we look at the PA testing and the maintenance, because if people are bringing them in, our first line of defence is knowing that the fire risk has been reduced because they are electrically sound. So that's the reason we've gone down that route. Everyone in the group, we sort of fully accept this is the first incarnation. It needs work because although it sounds like a very simple problem, it's not. It's very complex. There are a lot of angles that come off this. So this will evolve as we go. So any feedback and thoughts will always be very welcome to us in the group. Thank you.
Councillor Harrison and then Councillor Kelly, please.
Thank you, Chair. Mine's just a quick note question again, probably for Phil. Who is going to police this amount of vehicles? Because quite frankly, when you go to a lot of these centres, it looks like a car park with a lot of these vehicles. So it's all right saying we're only going to allow 3, but who is actually going to be policing that on a regular basis? Because I have a great worry about the risk of fire and everything, especially from charging overnight.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, so that will fall to, predominantly it's going to fall to the housing officers, and it's going to be some hard yards initially to do it and check the message. From my side, so my compliance fire officer, when he does his visits, I'd expect him to be looking as well. What we're hoping to do is some sort of scheme where when the tenants are engaging with us and actually saying, I need one, or asking for permission, they're then provided with a badge of some description or some evidence that they actually require one, because you raise a very good point. We have noticed that there are residents who have got a friend who comes over to visit who isn't a resident, who is visiting them, and then will charge their scooter on our site while they're there visiting. So it's not to stop anybody having them, but it's to reduce increase the safety and reduce the abuse of the scheme.
You okay with that, Councillor Harrison? Yeah, okay. So Councillor Kelly, please.
Thank you. I have spoken to the officer involved in this, and I think it's a massive hot potato. It's a bit like DVLA SK for mobility scooters, because there is an enormous amount of work in this to make sure that everything's safe. We've also got to make sure that we are DDA compliant, because if we can only have a limited number of scooters to be charged, how are we going to work out who's going to charge it under what hours of the day if it's not going to happen at night? Policing it. I almost wonder if this is something so enormous we can't expect the officers that we have to police it, and I guess this is why it's been on the back burner since 2021, when Councillor Moran recognised that it was first mooted. I wonder if we can have an associate of some sort to the council rather than our own officers to follow this up, because you can only really ensure that everybody can get a PAT test. I know that charity shops and things like that in the area where I live, they can't get PAT testers for love nor money. That's why they can't sell electrical goods. So how this will actually function and be a reality is very difficult. So I'm just wondering if some associate to the council could provide the PAT testing, would then be very interested in checking what type of chargers are used, would be checking that the machines that people were using were all fully compliant. I think this is a huge endeavour, and nobody should underestimate just how big it is. As I say, It's mini DVLA for scooters at SK.
Yeah, thanks for that. Back over to Phil, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't see an issue with it. The council has a contract for portable appliance testing. I don't see an issue with actually, once we've identified, the key thing about this is first it's the engaging to identify which tenants actually have them, where they're using them, where they are. They could then go on to a rota for the PA testing that comes under our control. Not a problem with that at all. The other side of this around the DDA and the actual charging, the other part of this is to identify if we do need external storage, additional storage, which does come with, again, a cost, but we need to know how many we've got, where they are, and actually that we have, that there is a need sounds the wrong word, but that those that have them need them, and those that have them and using them actually live there and have that charging need. So this is, we all understand this is our foot in the door on the start of a very complex problem, but perfection being the enemy of good, if we waited and waited till it was perfect, we would never start. So, like I said, feedback is always going to be very much appreciated. This is very complex, and it is going to be for all of us.
It's a wheel in the door, isn't it, rather than a foot in the door for you. Councillor Kelly, did you want to come back?
Sorry, I also forgot to mention that in terms of the cost, the overall cost of doing this, but then assigning the cost to the people who are using the facility. I know in the facilities that I visit where I live, there are a lot of people who are grumbling about the fact that it comes at the moment from community electricity, which everybody's paying for. So there's going to have to be an individual element to all these payments. And I'm wondering whether somebody's going to have to put a card in or something whilst they charge their machine. Are we going to just have a random, a specific amount that everybody pays? Because different machines are going to have different needs for electricity. And then there's a whole host of technology that would need to go with that, which is another cost. So good luck, Phil.
Do you want to come back, Phil? You don't have to. Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, the charging is another very good point. Some of the pods and the units do come with sort of a card, almost like a pay meter card that you can insert. And again, you're right, it is coming from the communal charge at the minute, and we do have some non-residents coming in, so it is something we are looking at. Again, we need to identify who first, so we can then start to look at charging. I think the fairest way would be those that are using it that are charged. That's not my decision. We'll work as a group, and that obviously comes to your good selves. So we are looking at the options. Our first, the wheel through the door, if I can steal your line, is to identify who has them, how big the need is, and then to tackle the problem in sort of bite-sized pieces.
Councillor Johnson, were you indicating? Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with Councillor Kelly. It's a real hot potato. I mean, I've got 5 units within my ward that use a lot of these scooters. The biggest problem I think you've got is some are big, some are small. In one particular area, they actually store them in the common room and charge them in the common room. I think health and safety is a real big aspect of this. They can get them in the lift, so they take them upstairs. I think it's going to be one real headache to police it no matter which way you go. And if you read a lot of the comments in this, people with scooters feel very discriminated against, so I think you've got to tackle that as well. But it is a health and safety thing, and it is a real hot potato. Thank you.
Thanks. Councillor Selby.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, as you're inviting comments on this. Anna's hit on the point, one of the points that I was going to ask about, you know, the cost of the charging, and Gloria's just hit on touched upon the other point, another point I wanted to make. I mean, can these be charged outdoors, Mr. Chairman, is one of the questions I'd like to ask. And also, as it's been mentioned that only 3 per 3 vehicles per area, the block of flats or whatever. If, for example, say half a dozen people wanted one, who decides the greatest need? And is it first come, first served basis? And also, just a thought as well, Mr. Chairman. I mean, there's this thing called car share, isn't there? You know, can they do mobility shares as some sort of scheme that they could consider. You know, if more people wanted it, it's just a thought to try and, you know, to be considered and helpful to as many people. Just like to put that out there. Thank you.
Yes, in terms of the number of mobility scooters, so what we'd look at is the individual people's needs, and we'd have to look at it on a case-by-case basis. In the unusual situation where there are, say for example, 6 scooters and there aren't any outside storage facilities and there aren't any inside designated areas, then we would look to see whether there's possibility to rehouse that individual or household elsewhere. But that would be in an unusual situation. First of all, we need to look to see where we'd look indoors for the designated storage facilities and then for outside storage facilities.
Yeah, sure, Phil, yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That was Celia earlier, not me. We shared a microphone, apologies. Just going on to some of the other points. So the National Fire Chiefs Council are those that identify that you shouldn't have more than 3 in a communal area. There is an option to have outside storage and storage pods and charging pods. They can range anywhere from sort of 15 to 20 up to 40, £44,000 per scheme. So there is going to be a significant cost there involved as well. You are right that people do use them in the lift, and unfortunately that's sometimes the reason that our lifts fail, because they're overloading the weight of them. So it's also about looking about anybody that has that need, where possible, is housed on a ground floor. So that there are options. We did also consider some people charge them inside their own flats. What we found there is we've already had to replace 2 brand new fire doors at a cost of £5,000 because the doors are being rammed with the scooter rather than being opened by hand and pushed. So we fully accept it's very complex. We are looking at all the possibilities, but to answer your question, yes, there is the option of having storage outside, but the 3 is not set by the council. That is recognised by the Fire Chief Council as best practice.
Do you want to come back, Councillor Selby?
No, thank you very much for. But you know, I appreciated the comments. It was the need. Who decides on the need, and you know, it was a first come first served basis, and that was one of the important points. But no, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Obviously, a possible scheme for mobility share.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I mean, look, I don't think any of us think this policy is going to be the easiest policy to implement, to manage, but we've got to have somewhere to start. We need to know that if we have got mobility scooters being stored within premises, that as a minimum they are being PAT tested each year, then at least then that helps with managing the risk. We have to take into consideration if we've got tenants using them to go up to upper floors, do they have the ability to get out of that building if there was a fire? Because can they use the stairs? It would suggest they can't if they're taking a mobility scooter in the lift up to upper floors. So in those sort of scenarios, we need to consider whether people need to be moved to ground floor accommodation, and that's about protecting them as an individual, not not the damage they may be causing with the mobility scooter. That's a secondary issue. But we do also have to take that into consideration that if fire doors are being damaged, and again, it's not necessarily the cost to replace them is a factor, but it's going to mean that that fire door isn't necessarily going to be effective for other tenants living with that accommodation if it's been damaged. So we just need to have a starting point where we can say, okay, let's start to get a register together. Who has actually got a mobility scooter in each of these schemes? And then at least we can start collating that information. And then from that point, we then start implementing different parts of the policy and working with tenants to make sure that we are managing the whole fire risk that's associated around these scooters, and also taking into consideration, we don't want to be discriminating against anybody that might need a scooter to be able to leave the building. But then that's where we can then start looking at alternative options. As Phil says, we can get the storage pods are available, but again we've got to look at the cost benefit of all of those as well, because they're not cheap things to install, and it's also having the space to install them as well. Where are we going to put them? Because again, we've got to take into consideration these people have mobility issues that are using the scooters, so where are they in vicinity to the actual buildings themselves? Thank you.
Thank you. A really good discussion, I think, which I now want to move it on, if we can, please. So we do need a vote on whether to take this to propose this to Cabinet. Do I have a proposer, please? Sorry? Very quickly, Councillor Selby.
Yeah, thank you. Just wanted to ask, Mr. Chairman, it's occurred to me, these batteries, when they're being charged, particularly indoors, do you get a lot of fumes off them? And if so, you know, obviously there's a factor there of the fumes being indoors. Just a thought.
Thank you, Chairman. Firstly, Alison is right. It is about safety. It shouldn't just be about the cost. But I see it, so I thought it needed to be mentioned. In terms of fumes, we've had nothing reported to us on any of the inspections my team have done or that the housing officers have done. The areas are quite well ventilated and quite a build-up, so we haven't had any report of it. However, if that battery was to be faulty or a battery not bought that meets UK standards, then yes, there is that potential, which can add to the problem. But as of right now, we have had no reports to us or any identification or notification of that as being a risk.
Have I missed anybody? My apologies, Councillor Baker.
That's all right. It was Councillor Kelly made me do it. Yeah, I just made a comment about if we're using these in these sorts of properties, are we also going to roll this out to all council properties? Because if there is a risk of fire from these mobility scooters, surely it applies across our housing stock, not just in flats and things like that.
Thank you again, Mr. Chairman. Sorry, it's me again. So the quick answer is no. We don't have the same power in that those domestic properties don't have a communal area where we have that legal obligation to undertake a fire risk assessment and to add enhanced fire strategies and details. What we have done is we created some new fire safety information that was shared with everybody who lives in a scheme or a general needs blocks of flats, everyone. And that included information about mobility scooter safety, e-scooter safety and general fire safety as well as lithium batteries. But we don't have the same power to say to somebody living in a ground floor house, a house who takes their scooter into the front door to say you must do this, this and this, because there is no communal area. It's where there is that communal area that we have an increased duty under the fire safety order.
Do you want to come back, Councillor Baker, or not? You're okay? Yeah? Okay. Any final comments on this? Councillor Mills.
Do we have any examples of a fire from the mobility scooters and the impact?
Thank you, Chairman. We don't, currently, thankfully, we don't have any in our properties, which is part of the reason we're trying to get this through the door. There are examples in other areas and other authorities, and I'm sure we could provide some information and data on that. Thankfully, we don't have any in ours, but yes, they have occurred. I know there's a lot of videos sort of YouTube that have been put out by London Fire Brigade and other fire brigades where they have quickly started and they rapidly engulf rooms and buildings. So we can certainly get some statistics probably from other areas, but like I say, thankfully, we don't have any data.
Thank you. So just a reminder to colleagues, this is a draft policy to go to, well, we're voting on whether to send it to Cabinet or not, as it stands, as the draft currently stands. So, you know, no doubt Cabinet will get their teeth into it. No doubt Cabinet will, you know, say a lot of the comments that have been made by committee this afternoon, but I'm just emphasising it is a draft. So on that basis, is there a proposer, please, to send this draft to the Cabinet? Thank you very much. So I'm going to take Councillor Milnes as the proposer and Councillor Habib as the seconder. Is that okay? Okay. All those in favour, please. That looks unanimous. Thank you very much. Okay, I'm minded to take the next item, which is stock condition surveys, and then have a comfort break, if that's okay with everybody. Look how democratic I'm being. So stock condition surveys, Councillor Moran, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, as you're aware, these are on a rolling basis. This year we had a target of 1,759 properties which needed to go through the process. As at the end of February, 1,617 had been completed, so it was not many left to go. Of that 1,600, a total of 67 health and safety risks have been identified, of which 33 were Category 1. All those properties' remedial works have now been booked in with the repairs team, so should be being completed as soon as humanly possible. The stock condition data is now loaded onto the Council Asset Management System, APEX, and this is used to plan where future investment is required to maintain and improve the Council's housing stock. A further 850 surveys will be completed during 2025-26. As a result of the stock condition survey work, the Council can confirm that 97.9% of the housing stock currently meets the Decent Homes standard. I think are we on a 5-year rolling basis? Yeah, it's a 5-year rolling basis that we do the stock condition reports on. Yeah, that's it, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Kelly.
Can I just ask, please, is that 97.9% decent home standard houses that are currently occupied, or does it include the ones that are void at the moment and waiting work?
Yeah, yeah, so just to answer that, the database includes all properties, including those that are void, so that's what we report against. And when we do the void works, we will then do a double check to make sure they're a decent home standard, and any additional work will be carried out to make sure they do.
Can I just say, I think that's brilliant, you know, the fact that the void properties are included in that, and we're up at 97%, is just to be, you know, commended, because it's impressive. Thank you.
Yeah, entirely agree, Councillor Kelly. This is just for noting. Does anybody want to come in? Well, Councillor Lane first, and then Councillor Selby.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just out of interest, really, to ask if there have been any common themes on the Category 1 failures that have been dealt with, and also to ask if all the EPC surveys are done by the same contractor, because I believe I've seen that there's some inconsistencies sometimes with reports, not just within our own stock, but as a national issue. So I was just wondering if that's all done by the same people, so that we have a consistent result.
Thank you. So just the second part of that was that we're using a company called Impart Links, and they are carrying out all the EPCs. There was a previous contractor called Pennington's that carried out the first batch of stock condition surveys. But as we get all the surveys in and EPCs, they do get checked by the asset team before they're uploaded into the system. Sorry, and I can't remember the first part of it. Oh, I do remember now. The main outcome of the HHSOS surveys have been issues of damp and mould, which we then transfer across to the damp and mould team, who then carry out an inspection and works as required in line with the new policy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to follow on from what Mark said, obviously we're reporting 33 properties when this report was written, but an update from the team today, we've only actually got 2 properties, so the other 31, the issues have been resolved with them, which is, you know, just shows how hard the team are working in getting all of these issues resolved. Thank you.
Okay, so as it stands, Councillor Harrison and then Councillor Selby.
Sorry, Chair, idiot in the room again. I don't understand, if we're including the voids in that, 97.9% are decent, why are the voids? If they're decent, I'm just trying to get my head around it, sorry.
So the voids work that's carried out in empty properties is all associated with bringing a property up to the re-lettable standard. So that may be clearance, cleaning, making sure it's compliant with the relevant checks before we re-let a property. They are not directly linked to a stock condition survey, so they're two separate pieces of work. Yes.
Alison.
Thank you. If I just put it into context, we've got about, I think we said today, we've got 66 major voids, so that accounts for about 1% of our overall housing stock, hence them being in those figures will include all of our properties based on the stock condition information we've got at the time. Thank you.
Councillor Selby.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Committee members come first, Mr. Chairman. Don't have a problem with that whatsoever. Totally get it. Important question, Mr. Chairman. Stock condition surveys, do they include subsidence? Because we've had a number of issues in recent years of subsidence in the Harrowby ward, that I represent. Whether conditions have a factor with subsidence, and I know it can be very expensive, you know, to address these sort of issues, and sometimes a stitch in time saves a lot of pennies as well, Mr. Chairman. So just that question, and obviously, if the answer is yes, you do, have all has the Harrowby ward been thoroughly checked for this issue, please, Mr. Chairman? Thank you very much.
I think the specific examples you've given I'd like to come back to rather than hazard a guess, but what I do know is that a HHSOS survey will pick up the safety of a property, and all of our properties are on the stock condition survey. There is a percentage of properties that haven't been surveyed yet, but which ones here and now I'm not sure what they are, so I'd need to look into your specific addresses you've given.
Okay, thank you. So, colleagues, anything else before we go and have a break? Okay, well, thank you very much. So if we can, 1:30, is that okay? Yeah, thank you, colleagues. Okay, colleagues, if we could make a restart, that would be wonderful. Thank you very much. So we've made decent progress. We're on item 12, update on social housing decarbonisation fund wave. What a mouthful. And that is Alison. Thank you, Alison.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we've bought several of these update reports over the last couple of years to use. So this relates to funding that the Council was awarded under the Social Housing Decarbonisation Fund, and the aim of the fund is to bring properties up to an EPC rating of C. If they go above a C, they're not eligible for the grant funding, so we have to be really careful about the measures that we implement at individual properties. So this scheme has focused on installing solar PV panels, air source heat pumps and external wall insulation on properties. There has been change requests that have gone into government as the scheme's progressed, where some people have been reluctant to have air source heat pumps installed. So because of the time restraints on this funding, we've then looked at where we can actually allocate that funding to a different measure. So we increase the number of PV panels that were installed on properties. So we were aiming to complete works at 367 properties, so 245 PV panels, 100 air source heat pumps and external wall insulation on 75 properties. So the external wall insulation, we did a major scheme up at Turner Crescent in Grantham. So we'd already had EWI installed at some properties, so we took a whole street approach and finished off the remainder of those properties. So the scheme is due to finish by the end of this month. We then have 2 months to get all of the inspections completed, the certificates issued, and I'm pleased to be able to update the committee that we're on target for completing the scheme. Then just an update on Wave 3. We weren't able to include this information in the report as it had been released by government, but it was embargoed. As a council, we applied for £6 million worth of funding, but the scheme was oversubscribed, so then government had to relook at the allocations, and it's been confirmed that the council has secured £4 million worth of government funding, which we will match fund with £4 million. So we're now working with the contractor just so we can establish the works that will be undertaken for that project. So obviously we're going to have to reduce down the number of properties that we were going to complete works on. So that's really, really positive news for the council. So we're working with, well, the team are working with Equans at the minute. So we want to be in a position that we can commence works as soon as possible in the new financial year. There'll be a team of people that are responsible for those works, and we're also going to have a resident liaison officer as one of the posts, so they will work with tenants whenever they're having these works undertaken on the house, so that there's that constant communication with them and they understand what the work's involved, how long they're going to take, when they'll take place. We've had that on the Earlsfield scheme and it's worked really, really well. So I'm happy to take any questions from members. Thank you.
Thanks, Alison. Yeah, this is just for noting, so I'd invite any questions or comments. Councillor Harrison.
Thank you, Chair. It's just whether I've had an air source heat pump fitted for this very reason, to cut my bills down, and my bills went up by about 48%. Are we doing? I'm well aware that it can be down to how it's fitted, who's fitted it, stuff like that. Are we doing any sort of check back on this, feedback on this for the 100 properties or the 82 that we've done? Are we contacting any of them and asking them whether they've seen any noticeable change in their bills or anything like that, or any follow-up?
I'm not aware that we're having any communication with the tenants, but it's certainly something we could look into. But these systems are set up when they're installed so that they should run at the most efficient time, in the most efficient way for the tenants. So it is something we can follow up. But air source heat pumps are primarily, we're installing where there isn't any gas. So the alternative is electric storage heaters, which are more expensive than what the air source heat pumps are. But that's certainly something we can review. We do analyse the costs that will be incurred, and it is certainly when we've had to do it on a recent case we've had, because we were trying to work out whether storage heaters or air source heat pumps which was the cheapest method of heating, and we were able to establish that the air source heat pumps were the cheaper form of heating when compared to the alternatives that are available on the market. Thank you.
Yeah, it just will be handy, even if maybe 2 or 3 of them have been set up wrong or whatever, you know, and just check that our residents are getting the best deal.
Councillor Kelly, then Councillor Mills.
Thank you, Chairman. Forgive my ignorance, but I'd just like to ask, is a pre-heat loss from the building survey done before you actually put the air source heat pumps in? And do you amend as much as you can all those things before it goes in? Because I understand this is a significant factor in how good the performance is from the air source heat pump. Thank you.
Yeah, so it's quite an extensive process to carry out measures through this contract, through this project, and the early stages are to carry out a retrofit assessment, which will scope out the works required, plus any additional works, such as ventilation or insulation, to make sure the air source heat pump operates to maximum efficiency and mitigates any increased in costs.
Thank you. Councillor Mills.
Yes, on a similar theme. I was quite surprised that when we install air source heat pumps that we don't have solar panels as well to help with the costs, the extra electricity costs. Generally they would go together. And also, whilst we might do loft insulation, do we look at the state of properties with very old windows, for example? Because that's what people are saying to me. Look, I've got these lovely new radiators, but look at my windows and look at this. And I think there is general, where you've had resistance to having an air source heat pump installed, a lot of it is over the cost. People know what their bills are currently, and they're really, really worried about the extra costs.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think there's been quite a lot of learning through this project. It has been quite complex, but we do operate within guidance in terms of what we can spend the grant on, etc. So whilst it would be ideal to put solar PV on all properties with the air source heat pump, because that's what customers really like, because that gives them that peace of mind, it's not always required as set out in the retrofit assessment. So we can't, if the air source heat pump is the primary measure that we are being asked to fit and it takes it to EPCC, you're not allowed to put anything else on top of that, because you've then met the government's target and you need to spend the money on other properties to bring them up to EPCC, because obviously we've got the target of 2050 and 2030 for EPCC compliance. The retrofit assessment does pick up, as I say, other measures. But in addition, this is why we're carrying out the stock condition surveys, because the windows will fall under the Decent Home programmes. And what I've seen from early kind of data reports from the stock condition surveys are that there are increasing number of windows across the stock that need to be replaced. So they will be part of the investment plan rather than the warm homes SHF programme going forward. And whilst a few years ago the government were really pushing for fabric first, in the future programmes it's very much focused on air source heat pumps and solar PV, but not necessarily both. It's about what it is most effectively gets you to EPCC. So unfortunately, as great as it would be, we're not allowed to put a PV in where an air source heat pump will bring it to EPCC. You can do it if it's required to then bring it up to see if air source alone doesn't achieve that. That makes sense?
Yes, sort of, thank you. I'm just wondering how we need to monitor that going forward, the actual efficiency of the air source heat pumps, and particularly with impact on people's bills, because that seems to be the main source of concern. And some of the properties that we have been putting them in, as you quite rightly said, are very old. I mean, old coal fires and old, windows, everything's old. So they're not the best properties in terms of, I'm assuming they've got to an EPC rating of C. But everything I've read about air source heat pump systems is that you really need to be higher than that for them to be efficient.
Feel welcome to come back if you want, Mark.
Yeah, so as I say, the retrofit assessment sets out exactly what is required, and there are very often insulation measures which are added to an air source heat pump installation project. But as I say, if that brings it to EPCC, they won't add PV. But having said that, there will be properties. I mean, we obviously haven't started next year's programme. There will be properties that will need both to bring it to that level.
Right, thank you, because I was a bit confused about joined-up thinking in this, and obviously it's going to come from different programmes and different sources. Thank you.
Councillor Moran.
Yeah, as an air source heat pump person, it's, I think some people feel that things like, because the radiators don't get hot, the thermostat isn't high enough, or people can convince themselves they're cold because the radiators are cold. And you need to understand that it's a completely different type of heating. I mean, I had someone say to me, well, how am I supposed to dry my washing if the radiators never get hot? And I said, well, for starters, rule number 1 is you don't cover your radiators with wet knickers. You know, well, my clothes get dried overnight, no question. It's overnight. It doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter whether it's my son's really thick hoodies or anything like that. And yet my radiators are never hot because I just put them on a drying rack in the spare bedroom, and I go in the following day and everything's dry. When it came to actually having it fitted and the measures that they do, because I've got a government grant for mine, they were in the same position. They could only bring me up to a C. I was currently an E because I'd only had 2 working storage heaters, which made the house into an oven in the morning and a fridge at night because there was nothing left in them. And you can't turn storage heaters on and off because it was one button. That's all I had on mine. They were so old. And I got insulation. They said you can have insulation, you can have windows, air source heat pump, solar panels. That was the sort of choice. They said, which would you prefer? My windows are all shut. I've got a gap, and depending on the temperature outside, the gap goes from about 3 millimetres to almost an inch because the door moves depending on whether it's hot or not. It's just bonkers, really, isn't it? But they could not, because I said, well, I'd really, really like windows, but then I'd really, really like solar panels. And if I'm having solar panels, you can't run storage heaters off solar panels. So I'd have to have it. And they said, we can't do that. That would make your house too efficient, which sounds mad, doesn't it? So I had to do without the windows. So I got a man in to fix the door. It hasn't lasted. As soon as we get this warmer weather, I can see it, the gap. But I did have to have a fan put in right next to this door that can have almost an inch gap at the top. I did say I don't think you really need to punch a hole in my house for that because I've got this. But so I think, I mean, my bills have just reduced out of all proportion. I pay almost nothing, £42 a month I pay, because I keep my house, my central heating is on all the time at the moment, but it's a lot lower than I would have put it if I had gas central heating. Gas central heating I'd have had at 21, 22, something like that. Air source heat pump, because it's on all the time, I have it at 19. And it does most of its work at night. And I'm still on economy 7 at night, so I'm on really cheap electricity. So I do think, and there are a lot of companies out there, I'm sorry Tim, do not set up the air source heat pumps correctly. My chap was brilliant. I don't know if he does foreigners, and I can send him round to you. Yeah. But if you're paying more, my suggestion is, well, that was a bit drastic. My suggestion is, if your air source heat pumps aren't cheaper, then you need to look at how you're using your heating, because I never turn my thermostat up. Never. I don't turn it up. I'll turn it down. If we carry on like this, I'll turn it down to about 14, 15. So the only time it'll come on is when it's heating my hot water.
Right, thank you very much for the tip, Councillor Moran. I will stop putting my thongs on the radiators overnight and see if it affects my bills. Well, thank you for that. Councillor Selby.
Mr Chairman, thank you very much again. Just a quick thank you to Sarah and Alison for their time during the tea break. It was much appreciated. Mr Chairman, I would just like to say big thank you to our council for encouraging these initiatives on these energy saving items. I had solar panels put on my roof just a few years ago, and yeah, it makes a big difference. And you know, Mr Chairman, when you consider that that next month, April, energy prices are going up by 8% in some cases, 11% in other cases. The national debt to some of these energy companies is astronomical, and it's frightening, Mr. Chairman, in my view, because we talk in the past about, at the present, I should say, choosing between eating and heating. It really is for some people. I don't know how they get by, some people, and when as a council, we're encouraging these measures, I just think a big well done, a big thank you to our council. If you just help one person out, wow, it's a thank you. Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Selby. Are we okay to move on, colleagues? Yeah, ooh, lots of nods. So moving on to empty property report, I believe that's also known as voids. We've had some drama on this committee over voids, and he's not here. I'm immensely disappointed, but over to who's this? Over to you, Councillor Moran.
Yeah, I'm gutted actually. I mean, it was his dramatic request that we prepared this report, but let's hope he's viewing us online as we speak from the ether. So, update on the Council's void property management and progress to reduce relet times. It's just for noting. A key priority for the Council is to reduce the backlog of voids that's built up over several years. I think we all know the reasons why we've got such a backlog, and we are obviously taking matters in hand with extra contractors to deliver on the backlog. Section 3 of the report provides details regarding the number of properties that have been received and completed by the team. In chart 2, in paragraph 3.3, this breaks down the number of voids in work in progress each month, including the number of voids to be inspected. Section 4 of the report provides details regarding the relet times for the different categories of void properties. And paragraph 4.7 provides overall void days for all void properties. In January 25, the average void days was 96 days, meaning the team has reached its KPI target of 100 days or less for 24-25. And we've still got 2 weeks to go. The other positive from us shortening the time is that we've seen the rent loss has been reduced by 25% from £2,000 to £1,500 per property in January. That 96 days, by the way, includes the time to re-let the property. So we're not spending 96 days putting it right and then handing it back. There's about 40 days from when we hand it back to the choice-based letting system, and then we go through the system of advertising it, getting bids in, checking out the bids before people move in. So I think it's pretty good so far. Section 6 of the report gives details of the work the team have completed to improvement performance during 24-25, and an internal audit is planned for the void service in the next financial year, and the Council will use the recommendations from this audit to improve its future service improvement plans and build on the progress to date. So, all good news, Chair.
Absolutely fantastic progress. Thank you to Mark and the rest of the team. Alison.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, just to give another performance update, we had our team meeting earlier, and some of the temporary accommodation units are being turned round in around 7 days now, which is a real positive, because then it means we can obviously put people into our own temporary accommodation as opposed to having to use either private sector or hotel accommodation. Thank you.
Councillor Mills.
Yes, thank you. I was quite surprised that we take 40 days, having finished the work, to then let the property. I was just wondering if there's any way that could be shortened.
I mean, I think you've got to look at the time. We have to get the property handed back to us. It needs to be inspected. It then gets handed over to the repairs team. We then advertise the property. It does get advertised whilst it's reaching the end of its void period. We do sometimes have, where we can offer a property and then people turn it down when they go to view it because doesn't meet their requirements, which then can obviously lengthen the void process. But what we are considering is Mark and Sarah met with Housemark, who collate data for the sector, and we are in discussions with them about undertaking a review of our entire voids process to see if there are any inefficiencies where we could reduce the length of it. So it's something that, and they should be able to feed back to us on that because they are the industry experts. They will have worked with other councils as well.
Councillor Harrison.
Thank you, Chair. If I'm reading these right, and explain to me if I'm not, if I'm an idiot, I think that's pretty good. We're running the voids repairs are running at 101% basically at the minute. Is that right? We just, so we're cutting that down. And also the loss on rent, is that again my math, tell me if I'm wrong, does that work out at around £200,000 we've saved this year with that reduction in 500 over 400 properties? Is that right?
Theoretically, yes, but it's been a reduction over the period. So yeah, if you are now comparing, say, this current year with next year, then yes, because you'd see that reduction. And plus, what we're hoping to have, because we've now cleared the backlog, I think it's fair to say we've cleared the backlog. Then therefore we should have far more voids that we'll have fewer voids that we're working on each year, also impacting on the rent loss. But I just don't think the team have done an absolutely fantastic job in achieving these figures, and they've had to work so hard to get rid of that backlog. We had properties that have been sat void for well over a year, and they've all worked together to look at different ways of working, how we can improve the performance. If this quick turnaround, getting one team in there just to turn around that void property, so then we can then be offering it out to rent, going out and getting 2 new void contractors so that we've increased the capacity for people to work on major voids. They really have. It's a real achievement for this year. Thank you.
Sorry, Chair. I really looked closely at this when we first got elected, and the difference from then to now is phenomenal. So, brilliant. Thank you.
So I'm going to say any final comments or questions on this item. The committee thanks the officers for their tremendous hard work. Thank you. And, of course, the Cabinet member. Okay, moving on then. Item 14, tenancy services update. That's Alison.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this is a report that Sarah agreed to bring to committee to provide you with information on the work the tenancy services team undertakes on an annual basis, because some of their work isn't sometimes visible because they are working behind the scenes, as opposed to Mark's team, where we do report on repairs, voids, the improvements programme. It's far more visible. So there are several aspects to this team. So there's the tenancy and estate management. So as you're aware, we've got about 6,000 properties. We have 6 housing officers. So they are responsible for providing approximately of support to 1,000 properties each. They are responsible for tenancy sign-ups, successions, mutual exchanges, fraud investigations, and Table 1 gives you a breakdown of the work that was completed by the team between November and January. They are also responsible for antisocial behaviour, which does take up a significant amount of time. You'll have seen in the budget report that we've created an antisocial behaviour officer post, which will sit in Aisha's team but work very closely with housing, just recognising the significant amount of time that dealing with antisocial behaviour cases takes up of housing officers' time, meaning that they then can't focus on other elements of their job. They also work very closely with the police and with legal teams, but these can be extremely complex, time-consuming, lengthy cases to actually get a solution to. The team have to clearly document information, so the new post is very welcomed. So Table 2 breaks down the number of ASB cases that the team were dealing with. So in January they were dealing with 15, but 7 of those were new cases that had been reported to us as a council. They then are responsible for enforcement of tenancy conditions, so they'll investigate and take action for breaches of tenancy. So this could be where tenants have altered their accommodation without asking for permission, misusing the property, overcrowding, because if you've got an overcrowded property, I mean, when we're aware of it, we do have people on the housing register that are overcrowded and they've applied for larger accommodation, but you get damp and mould issues and other issues that then come as a consequence of overcrowding. They manage the legal process to secure eviction, so they'll have to attend court to give any necessary evidence. So you'll see in Table 3 that shows the number of legal cases. So active number of legal cases is reduced from 10 in November to 4 in January. We've also got 2 tenancy support officers who will support tenants with sustaining their tenancy and provide a whole range of support to tenants. So that can be from managing their financial affairs to liaising with third-party agencies to ensure that tenants are receiving the support they need. They work closely with the cost of living team, so we'll refer tenants in to apply for additional support with that team. They currently have, so we've only got 2 of them, and they've got 33 active support cases, but there is a significant demand for this service. So when we sometimes get referrals from councillors where you've got concerns about tenants, we'll then ask a tenancy support officer to step in. But again, it's not always the number of cases they've got, it's how complex these cases are. So sometimes they could be working with tenants that are hoarders, and again that takes a considerable amount of time working with that tenant to support them through resolving the issue of hoarding in the property. And we've then got our sheltered housing team, so they're responsible for managing 30 sheltered housing schemes. They will go out and complete the personal emergency evacuation plans with tenants, which I think have to be completed on an annual basis. They will visit schemes on a weekly basis to ensure tenants feel safe and supported. They know who to contact. They hold tenant engagement sessions where the group of tenants can go along to the meetings, and sometimes people from, for example, when we were doing the works down at Riverside, the officer responsible for managing those works also attended those meetings so that they could provide relevant information to the tenants to reassure them through that process. So I think you can see this team, they're involved in lots of different aspects. So we have 6 housing officers, 2 tenancy support officers, we've got 3 housing coordinators, and then there's the manager of the team and then the team leader for the team. So they're all responsible for that tenancy management of those of our general needs schemes. And then we've got a sheltered housing manager and then 3 officers that work within the sheltered housing team. So a considerable amount of they're responsible for a considerable amount of work. And we are just in the process, although this sits on the homelessness side, of recruiting another tenancy support officer, but that'll be for people to work with specifically on the homeless side, which again was approved as part of the budget setting process, recognising that we need a little bit more support there because of the level of cases that those officers are responsible for dealing with.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for that thorough update, Alison. So again, it's for noting. So any questions or comments, Councillor Harrison?
Thanks, Chair. It is just I appreciate this is about the work that's going on, but if I could just get a bit of background information on this, as I'm a sub on this committee. I see that we've lost 1% of our houses in that quarter, November, December, January, to right to buys. How does that compare with us replenishing that stock? Are we doing about the same?
Calculator. Yeah,
Councillor Moran, sorry.
You may not be aware, as not being a regular on this committee, last November when the announcement from the government was going to be made about right to buy, they'd made the announcement that they were going to be looking at increasing the percentages, decreasing the percentages, tenants having to stay longer in properties because they were eligible, and what that resulted in was, in November alone, we had 62 applications just in November. Yeah, normally we get about 40. We're probably going to come back May meeting with updated CBL figures. I think I was looking at the last report and I think it'll be coming up for the year. And by then we'll know how many of those 62 actually went through. It'll be considerably less than 62, but it was still a massive blip in the system to have that happen. But we knew it was coming because everybody was trying to get in, but obviously not everyone can get a mortgage. Some people change their minds. So those figures are actually not completed? No, applications.
Yeah. Anything else, colleagues, on this? Okay, thank you very much. So we move on to item 15, tenant satisfaction measures survey. That's you again, Alison.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to keep my fingers crossed my computer does not die because I'm literally on the last. I'm on the last. Oh, hang on, Sarah might just be past. Oh no, I've got a different charger to that, Sarah. So that's. But thank you. Yeah, I think I might be all right. I think I might just get through the report. So the tenant satisfaction measure survey is a mandatory requirement placed on the council by the regulator of social housing. The results are submitted to the regulator, who will publish an annual report for social landlords who have 1,000 homes or more. So what the survey allows is it allows tenants to scrutinise the council's performance and provides information on areas where we could improve. So our survey was undertaken by Acuity, I think that's how you say it. It includes 12 mandatory questions, and the reason the questions are mandatory is that the regulators can then carry out analysis across all social landlords, so everybody has to ask the same questions. So there was online surveys and telephone surveys completed with tenants. So the online survey commenced on the 28th of October for a period of 2 weeks, and then there was then a telephone survey which commenced on the 11th of November for a period of 3 weeks. So paragraph 2.5, table 1, provides a summary of the overall performance. So what it does is it compares 23-24 with 24-25. You'll notice that most of our results have stayed comparable between years. There have been a 7% increase on the proportion of respondents who report that they're satisfied that we make a positive contribution to the neighbourhood, an 8% increase on the proportion of residents who are satisfied with our approach to antisocial behaviour, which I just think is really reflective of the amount of work the tenancy services team have undertaken through the year in our handling of antisocial behaviour cases. I mean, the most remarkable, it's still not great, but we've got a 14% increase on how satisfied residents are, again, with our complaints handling. So we now have improved, and there's a long way to go there, but we now have a complaints group where we meet to review second stage complaints and complaints that have gone to the Housing Ombudsman. We are constantly monitoring the performance with making sure we respond to complaints within the defined timeline. In previous years we've breached the timeline that's set of 10 working days for a stage 1 and 20 for a stage 2. So again, it just depends on, you know, at the point that maybe somebody complained to us, had we got that improved performance in at that point. But I think that the results, I'd say a lot of them have remained as they are, but there have been some significant improvements within the team. So, and as you, I mean, I hope you're aware, we are really committed with Councillor Moran and as the senior management team of housing in having that continuous improvement throughout the service. So Acuity will make recommendations of improvements they feel the council could implement. So they're detailed in table 2. So it focuses on how complaints are dealt with. As I say, we've already got a team in place that meets monthly to review the complaints we're getting and actions that we can take to address the complaints. So currently, when we're reviewing our complaints, they're all about, the complaints are consistent. People are complaining about the same thing. They're not happy with the time that it takes for repairs to be completed on their property. As you'll be aware from the last meeting, we've got a repair service plan in place. We recognise that we do need to improve there. The team are dealing with a backlog of repairs that relate to previous years. They've spent a lot of time cleansing that data, so we know exactly what the repairs that are outstanding on properties. So that's the consistent complaint we're getting through, but we're doing something to address that. Property maintenance, because of the length of time it takes for repairs to be completed, but we've got a repair service improvement plan in place which was presented to this committee in January, so again we know about it and we're addressing it. And then customer service and communication, again we know we need to improve engagement. We've acknowledged this in previous meetings. We are now working with TPAS, who are an organisation who are tenant engagement experts. They're working with us to develop a tenant engagement improvement plan, which we'll present to a future committee. So I think overall the things that Acuity are telling us we already know, and we're already actively doing something about it. So although we haven't got improved results between the years, we have already recognised that these are the issues that we need to address. And then Appendix A gives the breakdown of the tenant satisfaction survey results, which will be sent to all of our tenants, and then they'll then be uploaded onto our website as well. Happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's Councillor Harrison, then Councillor Kelly.
Thank you, Chair. It's not really a question. It's pointing out, because I'm the first to bemoan these surveys that are done and the way they colour everything, but this one is actually colouring it the other way and making the council, in my opinion, look worse. Because you look at that, so the proportion of residents, the one there, the 5% drop, proportion of tenants who are satisfied with the way landlord deals with the repairs, that's 50%, but it's 50% of 549. And now when you take that 549 as a percentage of our population, by its very nature, the only people that are going to respond to this survey mainly are people that have got a complaint. Somebody who's happy with everything are going to go, I'm not going to bother because I'm happy with everything. So, you know, credit to the team here. When you actually put those figures, the correct, what I call the correct way round, the percentages are way, way down. That's just, and this is what we've got to get across to residents. This is percentage of respondents, not percentage of residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. All I wanted to ask was, when Acuity do this survey, do they randomly choose the people they are targeting, or do they go particularly to people who've had repairs? Is it just a random sample that is tested? So is this a random 581? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, it is a random sample, and it should be representative sample of the tenants of our tenant database.
Thank you. So as Councillor Harrison says, when it's 50%, it's 50% of 10%, which is only 5%. Thank you.
A very good point, both of you, absolutely. Councillor Mills.
Sorry, that's what I was going to talk about.
Councillor Moran.
Yeah, I don't think there can be any question about how dedicated this current team of people are to improving every aspect of housing. But Rome wasn't built in a day. And I'm just happy that with everything else that we've been concentrating on, that we haven't fallen away with the complaints, with the repairs and complaints and how people feel about us. Something I will point out, which I found out very quickly when I became Cabinet Member, was there were a number of councillors who, if they had a tenant come to complain to them, their advice to that tenant was, make the complaint official. First off, they believed every word that the tenant said. And I think I've said it enough times that almost everybody is taking on board there are two sides to every story. But their sort of advice to tenants were, right, make the complaint official, claim compensation, and don't let up. And councillors were saying, we will personally progress these complaints to stage 2 to the Ombudsman. I mean, really? You know, help us out here, guys. If you talk to somebody who's got a complaint, please come to us. You can write to me any time you like, or ring me up. I prefer it if you write, because then I can get it in my system. And I've got an email. And we'll do our best. We'll let you know what our side of it is, because there may be things that you're not aware of. Yeah, I mean, I had one recently, and it's... I was just... no, I'm not going into that. Just... so, help us out, please. If there is if there's a complaint, if you've got someone who's really unhappy, ring me, or tell me, or myself, or Alison, or Sarah, depending on where it is, and we will do our level best to sort it out, because it's not in anybody's interest. If you knew the amount of work an official complaint to the Ombudsman takes up of officers' time, where they have to religiously create a report with every phone call, every action, you know, it just takes forever. And I'd rather the officers were doing things other than providing a load of evidence. So that's just a plea from me, really. Just help us out, yeah? Thank you.
Thanks for that, Councillor Moran, genuinely. Councillor Harrison and then Councillor Selby.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, when I started as a councillor, I was taken in by this, everything I was told was gospel. Luckily, Sarah's beat me around the head with a soggy stick, and I've got a different approach now. But yeah, it's but there were a lot more issues back then than there are now, and the issues now get solved a lot quicker. So, from my point of view, as not a member of this committee, as a reserve, I'd just like to say thank you. It's so much easier for me as a member going back to residents after coming to you guys and going, look, this is the issue. Is it correct? If it's not, you know, can you give me something to feed back? And that's working really well for me.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tim's made an excellent point about the number of respondents to these surveys. Well, I'm probably like everybody else in this room, get surveys for this, that and the other all the time, you know, in email and whatever. But a good lot of them, though, Mr. Chairman, they offer an incentive to respond, don't they? And I was just wondering whether we actually offer an incentive to our residents, to tenants, to respond to these. I mean, like airlines. I mean, they'll offer you a holiday or something like that, won't they? To respond. I'm not suggesting we offer a holiday, but I'm just the question on incentives, Mr. Chairman, is the point I'm making. And do we actually do that?
Got your point, Councillor Selby. Are there any incentives on offer? I shall get my mother to reply. She's a SK council tenant. Right, I've learnt something today, Mum. Right, okay. Are there any final comments on this item, tenant satisfaction survey?
No, just going back to those incentives, I'm assuming people were picked out of a hat to receive them, were they? Your mother just yet, because she might not get it.
So all of the tenants' contact details were provided to the company Acuity through a data protection agreement, and then they randomly selected them. It was all done on a computer.
Thank you very much. Any final questions or points on this? Excellent, thank you. So, work programme, I'm looking at page 128 on the agenda pack. It's not long, so I'll just rattle through it quickly. So, for the next meeting, which is sometime in May or June, we've got repair service, KPIs, garage sites and development, rent and service charge policy, decent homes, sheltered housing allocations review. We obviously need Earlsfield on there. Hopefully that will just about be done by then, but that is a standing item up until this point. And we also need, obviously, homelessness and rough sleeping is also a standing item for this committee. So that obviously needs adding. Any other suggestions from members for future work, or officers, of course, for future work programme? I'll let members in first if anybody wants to say anything. They don't, so Alison?
Could we add the housing service KPIs? I think the KPIs that are on there are the corporate KPIs that we agreed would start bringing those on a quarterly basis, and then an update on the choice-based letting service. Yeah, thank you.
Anything else, members, on this, on future work programme? No, that's brilliant. So there's no other business, so I close the meeting. Councillor Kelly, you just made it.
Sorry, I just wanted, I'm sure that you were just going to say yourself, we've been through 17 items here. There's a tremendous amount of work here just to bring this to the room. But what happened behind that, all the people who surveyed it, went out, did it, logged it, recorded it, the housing department should be highly commended. They do so much work, and I just would like to thank them all, and I'm sure everybody else here would too. Thank you.
I was on the same myself last week, because I saw the waste department was being shortlisted for another award. So I sent out a plaintive cry, why can't I get an award from the housing team? Why can't I? So I spent some considerable time at the weekend looking for public sector housing awards. Yeah, so I think me and Sarah are going to go on a course on how to write a bid to get a prize for your team, because I just think there's so many people that, well, to be honest, I don't come across any members of staff that aren't just nose to the grindstone. Yeah, perhaps SKDC could sponsor. Which staff have made such a difference? Yeah, I'm always astounded at how much work they get through. I wish I could give a prize to all of them.
It's an absolutely fantastic team. I praise it from the chair at every opportunity, and it's well deserved. But of course, we are a scrutiny committee, so we will continue to scrutinise the department's work, and we will challenge appropriately if and when we need to. But once again, thank you to the whole housing team for your superb work. And I close the meeting at 4:24. Thank you very much.